The World Series has ended and the baseball season has officially come to a close. What should be the Philadelphia Phillies' main takeaway from the Fall Classic? Find out in today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Locked On Phillies is your number one place for daily, Monday through Friday, Philadelphia Phillies content. You might know me for some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air over at 97.5, The Fanatic, doing sports talk radio here in Philadelphia for over 6 years. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for the past 4 seasons, and this is now my 4th year as the host of Locked On Phillies. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. The World Series came to an end over the weekend in an absolutely electric, classic Game 7 extra innings victory by the Los Angeles Dodgers. And the Phillies had their eyes closely on this World Series and how it was going to play out, as did the rest of baseball. That's something to keep note as well when we talk about the how should we react to the Dodgers winning back-to-back titles, but it was a tight series. So how do you balance that with how much you want to kind of complain about the Dodgers buying themselves a championship and breaking baseball in the process? So we're going to get into all of that. But later on in the episode, we're also going to take a look at our next big-time free agent that the Phillies could look at this offseason. Dylan Cease will be the focus of today's free agent highlight segment, and the offseason has officially begun. So our final segment here on the podcast today will be just kind of look ahead at what's going on, when, the dates, the times, everything, just like how things progress from here now that every Major League Baseball team is officially into their offseason, and only one is happy about it, and that is the Los Angeles Dodgers. Okay, maybe the Colorado Rockies are happy about it because it was not fun to watch that team this year. But bottom line is this: the Dodgers are the World Series champions for the second straight season. But they did get pushed to the brink by the Toronto Blue Jays. If you're a Blue Jays fan, you got to hold your head high, right? But if you're a fan of any other team in baseball, the rallying cry now for the sore losers and complainers out there is, you see what the Dodgers did? They're unbeatable. Even with the best effort the Blue Jays put up against them, they still didn't lose that series. And all this and that about why the Dodgers are infallible. Now, I don't know that that's a fair argument, but I do know that it's going to be used by the Major League Baseball owners. I know that they're going to look at that as a reason to recommend a salary cap and a salary floor after this next upcoming season, right? Remember, the CBA expires after the 2026 season, so after this next year, and then the negotiations will begin to try and save the 2027 season, which I don't know how that's going to go, but speculation around the sport says it's not going to go well. And the owners got what they wanted, kind of. The Dodgers winning does open up the conversation of they've broken baseball by just spending into the luxury tax more than any other team in the sport, stocking their team with unbelievable talent, deferring money to create an opportunity to bring in even more talent for contracts like Shohei Ohtani's currently, and then finding a way to win back-to-back World Series after doing that. Now, another part of the conversation might just be Shohei Ohtani is unbelievable and unstoppable, and maybe it's just him. And even if the Dodgers hadn't deferred like that contract and made it look visually like they were doing something to cheat, even though you're 100% totally allowed to defer money on a contract. That's why the Mets are still playing Bobby Bonilla. Some people could complain about that, but they're well within the rules, and it may just be that Ohtani's great. But from the Phillies' perspective, and I already kind of talked about this, but I want to double down on this point. Seeing the Toronto Blue Jays push the Los Angeles Dodgers to an 11-inning Game 7 in the World Series takes away any valid argument of quote unquote, we're close, or we ran into a hot team, or it was simply the circumstance. Because you know who didn't care about the circumstance? The Toronto Blue Jays. Do you know who wasn't as good of a team as you this year by record? The Toronto Blue Jays. Now, I believed in the Toronto Blue Jays. I did, as far as coming out of the American League side of the bracket, because the American League was not that good, which is why I said before, whoever comes out of the National League side of the bracket this year's postseason is winning the World Series. I believe at some points I might have said winning it easily. So I'm not going to pretend like I predicted Toronto to give LA a run for their money. I did not. That was shocking how that series went to me. So that's part of the reason why I kind of bought into Dave Dombrowski's stuff, like in a way bought in to Dave Dombrowski's comments about, well, it's the Dodgers and they're a really good club. And we ran into the wrong team at the wrong time and we didn't get hot, but at the same time, like that team's so talented and we played them tough. And when they complete the sweep of Milwaukee in the NLCS, you're like, see, they're just going to rampage through everyone. At least the Phillies took a game off of them. But that's so far gone now. What you can argue, you can't argue anything about that. Here's the difference. Toronto showed up to the moment, and the Phillies did not. Now, I know ultimately Blue Jays fans are going to be ticked off because that has to be heartbreak, right? Watching your team lose an extra innings Game 7 World Series. Maybe that's a little bit of payback for Joe Carter. Sorry, I hate to do that to you today if you're a random Blue Jays fan who's found their way to Locked On Phillies, but you did it to us first, so all's fair in love and baseball. But if you're a Blue Jays fan in the coming days and weeks when the heartbreak settles, you can hold your head high that your team fought to the end and gave it a really good run and took the Dodgers to the absolute brink of potentially losing that series. And the Phillies can't say that. And the Phillies are unable to say that not because of their low payroll. They were the second highest payroll in baseball, or in the baseball postseason this year. They can't say that because the owner's not contributing. They can't say that because, oh, well, we don't have a coach we trust, because Dave Dombrowski just talked about giving Rob Thomson an extension a couple of weeks ago and has already confirmed that he's back for next season. So if you don't believe the coach, well, guess what? You're stuck with the guy. You can't do it because you're like, okay, well, we got to change our core of players, because Bryce Harper is going to be here. Trey Turner is going to be here. Kyle Schwarber is most likely going to resign and going to be here. So at the end of the day, the Philadelphia Phillies reaction to the World Series that just happened would be, damn, there are no more excuses for us. We've got to change some stuff, whether it's trading Nick Castellanos and trading Alec Bohm and trading Bryson Stott and letting Ranger walk and letting other guys from the team walk. Like, I don't know, Harrison Bader and Max Kepler and stuff like that, just to do as much as you can to just give this team a different feel. That's kind of what you need to do, I think, if you're the Philadelphia Phillies, because trotting these guys back out is not getting the job done. Do you look at the Toronto Blue Jays and say that's the same team as they've had, as they've kept coming up short on their side of the bracket? I mean, in some ways, yes, they have some similar players, but they were constantly reworking and retooling their rotation, calling up Trey Savage, who was big in that postseason series, in the World Series, I should say, going out and getting help in the bullpen from former Phillies like Trevor Hoffman, Jeff Hoffman, who pitched like Trevor Hoffman at points in the postseason, and Sir Anthony Dominguez, who were both big parts of that bullpen. Like, they rework stuff, and the Phillies feel like they're on the verge of running it back. And that would be unacceptable, because you can't just point to, we played 4 games against the Los Angeles Dodgers and played them tough and won one of them. Blue Jays just played 7. Played them insanely tough, and we're like maybe a step away if someone gets a certain better secondary lead on third base. But that's a conversation for the folks on Locked On Blue Jays to have. Bottom line is this, and I know I said bottom line like 3 times, but I'm trying to reiterate this so that Dave Dombrowski maybe hears it. Or if you're a fan who believes in what Dave Dombrowski's peddling, maybe you hear it. You can no longer sit behind a microphone or talk to reporters or send some information to an insider for them to leak out, talking about how the Philadelphia Phillies were close. The Blue Jays were close. And even they still don't want to talk about that right now with how the World Series game ended. So that idea is gone. And now drastic measures are on the table. Not necessary, right? Not necessary. It's not like, oh, well, we're the Mets and we collapse and miss the postseason altogether. So fire the manager, get rid of the whole team, change everything, start from scratch. No, we're not there. But the drastic measures have to be at least on the table when seeing how the Philadelphia Phillies looked compared to the Blue Jays, compared to, in turn, the Dodgers. So it was not a great World Series for the Dave Dombrowski believers, or at least the folks that kind of understood where he was coming from in some of his comments after the NLDS defeat to the Dodgers. And part of me is included in that. So hand up. Phillies were not the second best team in baseball this year. Not even close. But could they become it? Well, of course. Of course they could be. They were second best in record. But maybe you need a tweak here to tweak there. Maybe you need some big-time tweaks and changes from the roster's perspective. So coming up next, we're going to continue something that we've been doing throughout the Phillies offseason, even though the MLB offseason is just getting started. We'll talk about that later. We're going to look at the next big-time free agent that could become a member of the Philadelphia Phillies. We're going back to another arm. We're talking about Dylan Cease. Let's talk about FanDuel first, though, because the NBA is back. And there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. The Sixers feel like they're making a fourth quarter comeback like every game. I was in the building to watch them play the Celtics, and I took the over, which didn't work out. And sometimes it doesn't, which is why what you need to do with this new promotion that they're offering is take something that's an absolute lock. Let me tell you more about the app first, though, because the interface, it's silky smooth, right? You can find all the bets easily. The payouts are fast, easy, and secure. So they'll get your money to you as quickly and easily as possible. And it keeps every game exciting to bet games. But this is even more exciting than just your run-of-the-mill bets. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So if you're a new customer, take that $5 and bet it on something that's not a toss-up, like the over in Boston, Philly last Friday night. Something that has like maybe a payout of like $1 on that $5. But you're going to get $300 in bonus bets when that bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's talk about Dylan Cease, who is a free agent pitcher, most recently with the San Diego Padres. And he's a guy whose name has been tossed around a bunch as far as a trade deadline acquisition. And I'm not just talking Phillies. I'm talking around the league. He's one of these top names of pitchers. We talked about Framber Valdez. Of course, we know about Ranger Suarez. You could argue that Dylan Cease is the third best arm in this offseason pitcher market in free agency, and the best righty, considering that Framber Valdez and Ranger Suarez are best lefties, or both lefties, I should say. He is represented by Scott Boras, which means, guess what? He's going to make some money. And the question is, how much do you pay for the pitcher he was and maybe still can be versus the pitcher he was in 2025? So he's kind of Aaron Nola-esque, right? He goes out and he just starts. 32 or more starts in the last 5 seasons straight. So you hand him the ball. He goes out there. He puts in the work. At age 30, is that going to continue? I mean, 30 is not to the point where you're overly worried about breakdown unless you give him a long-term deal. And the expectation is he's going to get around 5 to 6 years. Now, could that be $150 million, $160 million contract over that 5 to 6 years? Absolutely. Which is why you got to start to consider, is Cease having a drop-off is he at the point in his career where he's going to start his slide? Because this past year, he had a 4.55 ERA, which that number alone, and a lot of people love to dive into the analytics of, okay, what was his FIP, his fielding independent of pitching? What was his hard hit percentage, like barrel percentage? Is he getting soft contact and just getting burned? What is his strikeout potential? Is he going to give up some runs, but also keep a lot of guys off base by striking them out? And ultimately, at the end of the day, as much as I hate like wins and losses for pitchers, and I don't think they should be a pitcher stat anymore, ERA is the ultimate pitcher stat. How many runs are you giving up that you're responsible for on average? That is the mark of a good pitcher. And any other metric, in my mind, is just a further explanation of why your ERA is maybe accurate, more accurate, or less accurate. So when you see a guy with a 4.55 ERA at age 30, and a guy with a lot of tread on the tires, because I'm taking a different look at these start 30 times a year guys with what happened with Aaron Nola. And maybe this isn't fair to Dylan Cease, but when I watched Aaron Nola get that big deal and then come out this year and struggle and then get hurt and miss a lot of time and then struggle again when he came back, and he was good in the one postseason appearance against the Dodgers. But I just think, okay, do you want to pay a guy that's probably best years are behind him to the tune of 6 years and, I don't know, $187 million? That's the contract prediction from The Athletic here, or the article that I keep referencing for all these top free agents. So let's go through it, because for all the free agents, we're talking about the fit, the cost, and the realistic chance that they actually end up in Philly. The fit for Dylan Cease, I would go with medium. And the reason I would go with medium is because of circumstantial stuff. It's not so much what he does. It's what the Phillies could not have. They had Christopher Sanchez, Jesus Luzardo, and Ranger Suarez this past year as their main pitchers that we thought were going to be starting a postseason game. Aaron Nola did start a postseason game in that Dodgers series, but he got taken out after just 2 innings. So Ranger Suarez comes in and throws more. I'm going to consider him the de facto starter and Aaron Nola the opener from that game. My point in bringing this up is lefty, lefty, lefty. Your two righties in rotation were supposed to be Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler. Nola had a complete nightmare of a season for most of the time he was playing baseball in 2025. And Zach Wheeler had a dream of a season until a blood clot was discovered in his shoulder and he got shut down for the year. And now we don't know his status for next year, even though things, by all reports, seem to be progressing. It's still a lengthy recovery and still a dangerous situation. You can't rush anything. So anytime there's a setback with that, you get nervous. So things could go haywire with Zach Wheeler really quickly as he tries to rehab that thing. And we hope it doesn't, because that's more than just a baseball conversation, right? That's overall health. But the other thing that you need to look at is you have a righty coming up in Andrew Painter, who is supposed to get opportunity in the rotation this year. Here's why I don't want the Phillies to go get Dylan Cease and why the fit is listed as medium. Because if they tell you, or what it tells you, I rather should say, is if they go out and get Dylan Cease, they're basically telling you we don't believe in Andrew Painter to be anything at the major league level. That's what they're saying. Because if they believe in Painter, they're not going to spend money on a 30-year-old to take that right-handed spot in the rotation that could be open. I don't believe that they're going to do that. I don't believe that they're going to potentially block Painter. So I don't think – I think the fit's medium because of all of that. The cost is obviously high. I already told you the projected is 6 years, 180-something million, especially considering the guy had a 4.55 ERA this past year and at points looked really, really rough on the mound. And then the realistic chance is going to be low. I just don't see a situation where the Phillies go out and with Schwarber on the market and with JT on the market and with Ranger on the market decide that where they're going to commit $180 million or even $150 million if there's a major dip in Dylan Cease's value for some reason. I don't see them going out and committing that money to a 30-year-old righty who seems to be a bit on the backside of his career. Whoever gets Dylan Cease, I think they're getting a quality pitcher that can eat up innings. But the Phillies kind of already have some of those guys. And we'll see if they come back. But until we're sure what Nola is going to be, what Zach Wheeler is going to be health-wise, and what Andrew Painter is going to be, there's just no reason to commit to a long-term deal for a player like Dylan Cease. There will be pitchers, I promise, because I know what you're thinking if you've watched regularly, listened regularly, and heard our free agent evaluations. So it sounds like every pitcher, the realistic chance is going to be low because the Phillies aren't going to go sign a pitcher in free agency. That is not necessarily true. There will be guys as we get deeper into the free agent class of 25, 26 that seem to fit really well, and there is a realistic possibility of fit. It's just not going to be the big-time arms because, frankly, the Phillies already have a bunch of big-time arms. They got to figure out the big-time bats, and they also got to figure out how to make the most out of those fringe spots on the roster, and that's where you're going to be looking at corner outfielders, bullpen arms, stuff like that as far as free agency is concerned. Coming up next, the offseason officially begins for all Major League Baseball teams. So we're going to talk a little bit about what you need to be aware of, what's happening when, all of these great things that are going to be happening that we're going to be talking about on Locked On Phillies between now and when spring training gets going. So your roadmap to the offseason, not just for the Phillies, but for Major League Baseball, comes your way next as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Let's talk about game time first, though, because the NFL season's rolling right along, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues and login screens and prices jumping at checkout, it can be really frustrating. Football, 17 games a year, can already be frustrating enough worrying whether or not your team's going to win. And that's why I use Game Time, because win or lose when I go to the game, at least I know I'm getting a great deal on the tickets because they're the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. The Eagles, they're tops in the NFC right now. It's the time to pack the link. They're on the road this week in Lambeau. Hey, maybe take a trip. If you do, look at Game Time for your tickets. But next week after that, the Detroit Lions come to town, a big-time playoff implication matchup. The link better be rocking, and you can check out tickets on Game Time. You can also check out tickets for other sporting events, hockey, basketball. You can look at it for comedy, concerts, theater, all that great stuff that you need a ticket to attend, but you want to be there, and you want to make sure your seat's great and your tickets are legit and that you got a good deal. That's why you got to use Game Time. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go, and download Game Time today. So let's talk about the MLB offseason because now the final two teams have joined the Philadelphia Phillies and the rest of baseball in their offseason. The Dodgers are happy about it. The Blue Jays, obviously not. Now, to the Blue Jays, 28 other teams in baseball say, we feel you. I was counting 32. I'm in football mode at this point. But they join us. And now the offseason officially begins. So what happens from here? Well, there's this kind of down period where teams just take stock in what's going on, right? Here's where we need to add. Here's where we need to keep guys. Here's where we have budgetary stuff. There's a little bit of a grace period here before you really get into free agency. So we've got a little bit more time to continue to break down free agent potential pieces for the Philadelphia Phillies. But that will be here before you know it. Just a little bit of an aside for the podcast as well, for folks who are everydayers who join us and are checking us out on YouTube or listening in podcast form every day. By the way, we'd love for you to be part of our Everydayers Club. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can hit that subscribe button and it'll get you notifications when new episodes are posted. It'll help you out with that so you never miss any big-time Phillies news. And it's free and easy to subscribe. We're also available wherever you get your podcasts, like I was saying. So you can check us out. If you're not able to watch a certain day, you can listen. And if you're listening, I'd love it if you rate and review. Appreciate everyone who joins us on Locked On Phillies. But for the podcast, we're going to keep rolling 5 days a week episodes up until the winter meetings. So we've got a lot of great content for you. We're not going anywhere. And the reason why is there are some big time dates. November 2nd, which is already yesterday, free agency has technically opened already. So no one gets signed like today, right? No one immediately is just like, oh, free agency open, bang, that guy signed, unless it's maybe an in-house player that was never going to leave. Trading is now reopened. Post-trade deadline, you couldn't do anything. As of yesterday, you can trade again. Normally, we sit around and we let teams settle in a little bit first before you see those moves, like I was saying. November 6th, which is coming up this week. It is actually this Thursday is the deadline for opt-outs. So for a player like Alex Bregman, who we talked about, who's expected to opt out, that will become official on November 6th. For a player like Harrison Bader, who has a mutual option with the Philadelphia Phillies, who's expected to not exercise that mutual option, that will be confirmed on Thursday. There may be some sneaky big names that get on the market that you did not think were going to make it. An assumed opt-in, that doesn't happen. Or there could be an assumed opt-out that surprisingly doesn't happen as well, and then you lose a free agent that could be in the class. November 6th is also the deadline to make qualifying offers, which is, we'll explain that further on the 6th, but basically a way to keep players in-house if you're matching those deals. Like a team would have to beat that qualifying offer if the player turns it down. We'll get into the weeds of that. But a lot of contract stuff on November 6th, which basically opens up the true first wave of free agency, which is going to be as soon as, and again, when free agency opens in, let me say this the right way, because I think I might have not done a great job of explaining it at the start. So teams have their players become free agents as of yesterday. Free agency where you can sign players officially begins on the 6th when the opt-out stuff all happens and everything. Then you get kind of just, I don't know, random dates where gold gloves are announced and awards are announced and MVP is given out. The deadline to file reserve lists is in here. So there's a lot of random dates that probably don't mean anything unless you're the president of baseball operations for a baseball team. But the owners' meetings in New York, November 18th to 20th, can be points of movement. And then the winter meetings, which are December 7th to the 10th this year. So about a month away down in Orlando, Florida this year they are. That's when free agency really ratchets up. So between now and then, we're going to still be doing 5 days a week to get you set up for what's going to be the big gold rush of free agents, which is expected around the winter meetings, as it always is. And we're going to continue to break down different little nuances of what the Phillies can do different this next year in order to have a different result. And not the make it to the World Series and lose in 7 kind. Make it to the World Series and win it. Knock off the Dodgers. Become the king dog in the National League and in baseball in general. And we're going to have some real candid conversations about whether or not that's possible. Because seeing what you saw in the World Series, you might have serious doubts that, one, the Phillies are in that league with the Blue Jays and Dodgers, and 2, that the Dodgers are ever going to lose again. I want to be fair on this. Like, if I know they're going to lose again, but part of our offseason conversation is going to be how realistic is it to go in on the current landscape of baseball? Might be a time to take a step back. That's something that I did not think I'd be saying this offseason, but the more I look at what could happen with the lockout and what did happen with the World Series, I wonder if that's maybe a prudent approach. So those are the important dates. Again, winter meetings in about a month. Free agency technically opens on Thursday with the contract stuff opened up, even though players became free agents officially as of yesterday. And we're about to get rolling real quick here, which is why I appreciate you being a part of Locked On Phillies. And you got to become part of our Everydayers Club. Subscribe to the YouTube, rating and reviewing in podcast form so that you don't miss a darn thing, because there's going to be a lot of news that pops up, Philly-centric and baseball-centric, as we head into a very important offseason for, well, I guess the Phillies have already been on theirs. But now officially, a very important offseason for the Philadelphia Phillies. That's all for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Please make sure, once again, like I brought up, you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff that really helps us out. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I will talk to you tomorrow on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.